So I think we can kick it off, and then anybody who joins us later, they can catch up, and we'll have the recording so that they can watch anything that they missed. So I just want to thank you all for taking the time this evening to come to our candidate forum training webinar. I'll introduce myself first. I'm Eileen Newcomer. I'm the voter education manager of the State League, and I'm going to have my co-presenters introduce themselves as well. Maria, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Maria Douglas, and I'm the DEI Senior Specialist for the state, and I'm also part of the Ozaukee County League, pronouns she, her, hers. And Posy.
Yep, I'm Posy Thurow from Winnebago County. I'm on the State Voter Services Committee and also a Voter Services Chair for the Winnebago County League. Ta-da!
Yay! All right, now I'm going to share my screen. So in tonight's training, we are going to be reviewing the State League's candidate forum policy and guidelines. So I know many of you are league members. There may be some people in the audience who are not league members and just want to know how we run candidate forums or are interested in running candidate forums of their own for another organization. So just know that the framework and the policy that we're going to review today is specific to the State of Women Voters of Wisconsin. We're also going to go over some DEI best practices and considerations, and then some best practices and the policy in action, so that we can all see how it works in practice and learn from how local leagues are implementing the policy around the state, in addition to some candidate forum alternatives. We do plan to have some time at the end for Q&A. We do ask that you hold questions until the end and mute yourself during the presentation. If you want to, you can put your questions in the chat. At the end, we will go through the questions and answer as many as we can. I did check with Maria and Posy, and if we have a ton of questions, we're all able to stay on a little bit longer and try and get through them all. So hopefully we'll be able to get to all the questions today. So before we get into the candidate forum policy, I wanted to start by kind of giving a sense of the framework of how we go about candidate forums. So the first thing to think of is the league framework. So with the League of Women Voters, our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. So we really come at it first and foremost as a way to empower voters. So our focus is on how do we get information about the candidates to voters so that they can make informed choices. In addition to that, the League has a really strong nonpartisan policy. And that is really important to us and integral to all the work that we do. So it's important that we conduct all of our candidate forums in a way that is nonpartisan, and we never support or oppose any political party or candidate. And we all bear the responsibility for safeguarding our nonpartisan policy and the organization's nonpartisan reputation. In addition, we have our DEI policy, and our bylaws hold our nonpartisan policy and DEI policy in equal standing. And just as any other activities the League does, it's important to take this into consideration and live up to our ideals. So I'm really looking forward to what Maria has to share with us later this evening. And then finally, another consideration that we have to account for is that the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin and all of the local leagues around the state are currently designated as 501c3s by the IRS. So this is a specific tax designation. And this allows us to receive charitable donations and have the donor have those donations be tax deductible. It also gives us the ability to do other things. And so this is just important information for us to know as we look at the regulatory framework as well. So there are different regulatory bodies that we do need to account for and to take into consideration with our candidate forums, and to make sure that we are following all of the rules. And although legal challenges are infrequent and debates and forums and campaigns in general can be high stakes activities. And so we want to make sure that we follow all the rules so that in case something does happen where somebody is, rubbed the wrong way, they decide to take action, we are protected as well. So none of the things that I'm going to say here should be construed as legal advice, but I do want to share the information that I know with you all so that we have a shared understanding. I am going to focus on the federal regulators because they're more stringent than our state ones. And so if we follow their guidelines, we should be in the clear. So one of the first ones that I want to talk a little bit more in depth about is the Federal Election Commission. So they regulate the conduct of corporate, labor, and nonprofit organizations in federal elections. And they define a debate or forum as an event that has at least 2 candidates, is staged in a way that does not promote or advance one candidate over another, and allows the candidates to appear at the same time in face-to-face confrontations with the opportunity to respond to each other. The next one that I want to review is the Federal Communications Commission. So they regulate any broadcasting or cable casting. And if we are ever going to record a forum and live stream it, which is considered a form of broadcasting, we need to make sure that we are following their regulations as well. And so we need to make sure if you are going to do some form of broadcasting that you must provide all other legally qualified candidates the same office with equal opportunities as well. So keep that in mind. If you're going to record and live stream a forum, you do also have to keep in mind of the Federal Communications Commission's regulations, but our policy does take this into consideration. So just want to say that. In a forum that's broadcast must meet the following FCC requirements. The decision to cover the forum must be based on a good faith judgment of the newsworthiness. They must not be edited and broadcast in their entirety. And they have to have at least 2 candidates. Now, the final one I want to touch on is the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. We all know what they are. And as a 501c3 organization, we may not participate or intervene directly or indirectly in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition of any candidate for public office. And so this extends to us as members of the league, but just because we can't do something that would endorse a candidate or show preference to one candidate or party over another does not mean that we can't inform the public about the candidates. And so this really aligns with our nonpartisan policies. So as long as we're following that, we should be all good. And again, our policy meets these regulations. But I did want to share the framework to show kind of how we ended up with the policy that we do have, which I'm going to go over in a second, to help inform you of kind of how we got to where we are. So we do ask all local leagues in Wisconsin to use the state league policy on candidate forums for state office for any federal or state offices. And I have them listed up here on the screen. And this policy ensures we make fair and consistent decisions within both the league and the regulatory frameworks, as I mentioned. So now I'm going to jump in and go into some of the key components of the policy that we have. And so first and foremost is leadership. How do we determine who is going to take the lead in the candidate forum? So the first thing is the league who's planning the forum is going to designate either a standing committee or an ad hoc committee to be in charge of ensuring that the forum goes on smoothly. And then from there, can look at finding different partners or co-sponsors to join you in the candidate forum. I strongly encourage looking for different partners or co-sponsors for forums. They can help broaden the audience that we reach, and can also, I guess, connect, bring other members into the planning process as well, and empower more people to get involved in the process. It is important, though, that when we select partners, that they are perceived by the community to be nonpartisan, and they should never endorse candidates or produce any scorecards that could be perceived as partisan. And they also must be willing to follow our policy. So next, looking at if we're going to have a candidate forum, how do we know who to invite? So we have the criteria that's here on the screen for who we invite to state and federal level candidate forums. First, they must be eligible to hold the office for which they're running for. And then second, they must have met the criteria to be on the ballot. We don't allow for write-in candidates to participate in our candidate forums. We also have some regulations around how candidates participate in our forums. First, they must appear either in person or virtually. If they're not able to do that, we don't allow pre-recorded statements to be shared. And we also don't allow any substitutes for the candidate to appear in the forum. And then one thing to know, we do have sometimes where we have forums that have candidates from different offices, either at the same time or back to back, and that is allowed within our policy. So let's get into the policy about empty chairs. And what do we do if somebody does not want to participate in a candidate forum? So a league may face a potential empty chair forum if a candidate does not respond to or declines an invitation to participate in a forum. And this could be for many various reasons that vary from candidate to candidate. Another reason could be that a candidate initially accepts the invitation to participate in a forum, but then backs out or does not show up to the event. Again, this could be for a variety of different reasons: an illness, family emergency, scheduling conflict, etc. And so, although participation of all candidates is not strictly required, the more candidates who agree to participate, the better. If one or more candidates refuse to participate, there's a danger of the perception of partisanship, which increases as fewer candidates participate. And to mitigate this, we have, and to meet regulatory requirements, our policy is as follows. So all candidate forums that we run have to have a minimum of 2 candidates participating. If only one candidate agrees to participate, the forum will not be held. If a forum occurs and not all candidates choose to participate, the moderator will announce that all eligible candidates were invited to participate, and they will simply state the candidate either did not respond or declined to participate without any additional editorial on top of that. We're not looking to give excuses or explain away why somebody didn't show up. We're just going to say they chose not to participate or they declined. So some logistics for running a candidate forum. One of the first things is, once you know who you're sending the invitations to, is to get those out. So we have a policy to make sure that everyone gets invitations in the same manner and fairly. So the first round of invites are all sent out to the candidate's official email address that's on file with the Ethics Commission. And they're all sent out at the same time. And then if needed, follow-up contacts will be made simultaneously to all candidates, either by certified mail, phone, or official candidate social media accounts. And we also document the times that we reach out to candidates to make sure that we are being fair and we have that record. Now to recording of candidate forums. It is okay for leagues to record candidate forums, and this actually can be a really good way to increase the reach of your forum. But all recordings must be presented in their entirety and may not be edited. So this goes back to the FCC regulations that I talked about a little while ago. We want to make sure that we're complying with those. Next, for the date selection, the forum committee is going to select a date and time in consultation with the candidates. And, we always try to make a good faith effort to find a date and time where all candidates can attend. And this can, involve a little back and forth to try and find a time, again, where everyone can participate. And then finally, we do allow for forums to either be in person or virtually. So we've had a lot of success with forums over Zoom, and they have worked really well, but there are other platforms that we can utilize in addition to Zoom. This is the general forum structure that we follow in our policy. It begins with opening remarks, where the moderator explains the rules for the forum and that the candidates have agreed to the way that we run our forums, and then also explains how we get questions for the candidates. Next, we go into opening statements. All candidates are allowed to give a brief opening statement, all with the same amount of time allotment. Next, we go into questions, and the moderator will ask questions of the candidates and give each of them equal time to respond. The order of which candidates respond in is chosen by lot, and the order of who begins each round of answering questions rotates from candidate to candidate. So everyone has an opportunity to be the first one to answer a question and an opportunity to be the last one to answer a question. And then finally, the closing statements is optional in our candidate forum policy, but it can be nice to give candidates another opportunity to give a closing statement to kind of wrap up their talking points. And again, if you choose to have closing statements, you want to make sure that you give the same time allotment to each candidate. So we get this question a lot about where do the questions come from that we ask in our candidate forums. And they come in a couple different ways depending on the way that we are running the forum. So if it's in person, questions are generated from members of the audience. We'll have members of the candidate forum committee go out and circulate note cards and pens where the audience members can write their questions on there. We collect them. And then they're reviewed and looked at by the moderator. And then for virtual forums, questions are generated by the public and submitted in advance of the forum. Questions may also be collected during the virtual forum, either by using the chat feature, the Q&A box, so that they can be gathered and again distributed to the moderator to be asked of the candidates. Also know that the forum committee may compose a few questions for the candidates to use if needed. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for the audience to generate questions, or there's just a lot of repetition and more questions are needed. And so we do reserve the right and the ability to have some questions available for us to use as well. And then the forum committee may also screen questions for fairness, repetition, to make sure that they're open-ended, and then also to screen for any offensive language. So also within our policy, we have it stated that we are going to promote our candidate forums as widely as we can. It's always a best practice to make sure that as many members of the community are aware of the forum and can learn about the candidates as well. There are different strategies that are involved in this, but we do try to make it clear in our policy, which we give to candidates, that we will be promoting the forum. And then finally, a lot of candidates will bring candidate literature with them to a candidate forum, and we do have it in our policy that they are allowed to bring it. They can't distribute it inside the room where the forum is being conducted, but if they want to stand outside the room, they can distribute it outside the room where the forum is being conducted. Although we do require them to have the legal disclaimer that it's authorized and paid for by their committee or whoever it's paid for by. So as I mentioned, we do ask that any league member or any league that is hosting a candidate forum for state level or federal level office do follow this policy. And as part of that, list us as co-sponsors as well. And so as a co-sponsor, the state league will assist in any promotion, provide guidance as needed. You know, we get questions all the time about different logistics around candidate forums. We're happy to help with those kinds of things. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We also can assist with accessibility needs and DEI considerations, which Maria will talk about here in a second. And then we also want to reserve the right to approve any potential forum co-sponsors and can help vet potential partners as well. And finally, I just want to make it clear that this policy relates to state and federal candidates. Local leagues have the ability and are encouraged to create their own policies for forums for local candidates and can be a little bit more flexible than we are. But we do encourage you to hold kind of true to the structure and take the policy that we have into consideration as well. So with that, that was a high-level overview of our candidate forum policy and some of the regulations that go into it that we need to meet with the policy. I'm going to pass it over to Maria to talk about DEI.
Hi, everyone. This is Maria here, she, her, hers. And so as you watch, I always include videos in my presentation. So you only have 10 minutes with me and this takes up a bunch. And so I want to preface this with, think about, for those of you who have attended any of my presentations about the intersectionality wheel, think about like Sesame Street, who are the people in my neighborhood, right? And so it's not, you know, most of us live in predominantly white, like 94% and higher, but there's other people in your neighborhood as well. People with disabilities, people of, you know, military status, people of different religions, and, you know, and so on and so forth, different, you know, parental statuses, and, you know, and they may have jobs, they may not have jobs. So as we watch this together, I hope this kind of helps you think about who is in your neighborhood. Eileen?
We are all equal before the law.
Women and girls with disabilities should have the full rights and freedoms enjoyed by everyone in the community.
As children with disabilities, we have the right to express our views on matters that affect us.
We are capable and contributing members of society.
We have the right to physical access and information access.
We have that right to life.
We have the right to be rescued in times of disaster.
We have the right to equal recognition before the law.
We have the right to justice.
We have the right to live freely in the community, to live independently and be included.
We must not be tortured, exploited, or abused.
We have the same rights as others to choose where we live and where we travel.
We have the right to access information and to express opinion.
We have the right to privacy and to have intimate relationships.
Our children cannot be taken away just because of our disability.
We have the right to education, jobs, and health care.
We have the right to participate in cultural and public life.
Awesome. So I just wanted to kind of show that to you. I know as I've been visiting leagues, even as you know, really all over the state, you know, there are people who work on farms, or people who are refugees, or are, you know, people in your neighborhood who also have the right and need voter information, as we just saw. And so we'll go on to the next slide. So in the resources, like at the end, you'll see, like this is also on the website, but I've created a DEI DEI guidelines for candidate forums, but also, so you know, I'm going to plug this as well. Molly Carmichael and I have created DEI guidelines for communications as well. And it's just really to reach out again to all the people in your community. I'm also going to shamelessly plug our demographic survey, which will be launching February 1st. And that helps us to kind of get an idea of like, I'm going to give your presidents a dashboard I created with all the census data for each of your local leagues within the boundaries of your local league. So some leagues are 7 counties and some leagues are half a county. And so it's all compiled along with every year, every year's DEI and demographic survey results to help you guys kind of pinpoint areas where you're really like doing well in, and other areas where like, oh, did you know the like, you know, you have a large group of people in nursing homes in your community, for instance, or the LGBTQIA plus community. And I'm here to be a resource for you to help you brainstorm, like, well, how do we reach out to them? And so I'm just going to quickly give an overview, but this is all taken from the document I was referencing to. So first, when you start a candidate forum, just think about who's on your committee. Like Eileen was mentioning, there's, you know, we encourage that there be an ad hoc committee that forms this. So are the members of our committee representative of the demographics of our community? And here are just some examples. How we reach out to local and partnering organizations to see how they might be involved and are represented. And a resource that your presidents have and is our CAC spreadsheets. And so right now we have one for Black organizations, Latinx, young youth, and Hmong statewide. And so your presidents have access to those lists. Those are our existing coalition partners and other partners that potential partners you can reach out to in your community. Are we offering a time and location, like accessible options for planning? So like nights or weekends and or a virtual option. Have all the members of committees had an opportunity to provide input throughout the process? And that's a really important part of inclusion, right? So we can invite people from differing members of our community that we're not used to having as a part of these conversations. But when we do so, just being cognizant that everybody who comes to the table has an equal voice. Have we budgeted for assistive technology translators and transcribers? So this is applicable to local level races where state is not co-sponsoring. So school board candidates, county supervisors, alderperson, mayoral races. Next slide. Okie dokie. So again, who are the people in your neighborhood? They're the people that we meet each day, right? Have we advertised in spaces to reach each demographic of our community? So this, when I ran for office, this was a big topic because we have always used the newspaper, but most people, you know, in their 40s and younger, they don't know to look at the newspaper. So it's like really thinking outside the box and asking those people on your committee or your partners, like, well, where's the best place to advertise? And have we asked our partners to advertise? have we asked in our, like for people who are registering for the forum, if they need, have accessibility needs. And also, so you guys know, if you are hosting local candidate forums, all of us at state are still here to help you. And so if you have questions or need translators, transcribers, etc., just call us. It doesn't mean that we're going to be able to pay for it, but we can definitely help you guys walk through that. Our printed materials in plain language. And for more information, you can reference the DEI communication guidelines that Molly and I are drafting. Are they ADA compliant in both font and size? Languages. Have we looked to discover the languages spoken in our community? So again, these dashboards will be rolled out within the next month to all 20 of your presidents. And so they will have this information. And are the predominant languages represented via live translation? So at state, one of the services that we offer for any state co-sponsored event is translation transcription services in any requested language. In Wisconsin, predominantly it's Spanish and Hmong. And so we do have a list of transcribers and translators, although it's important to note that Hmong is primarily a spoken language. Have you considered having an ASL interpreter? We also have access to those as well. So going back to questions, have we also asked for input as far as questions from the various people groups or groups represented in our community? Are our questions leading? Are our questions biased towards a priority of one community over another? Next slide. Okay. This is an area where I'm also very happy to help. There are resources across the state where you can rent equipment for accessibility, and also just general ideas to help you guys with this as well. So have we considered hosting a forum in a facility equipped with a hearing loop? And like, and you guys at any time for any of my presentations or any of our presentations, if you have your phone, just take a picture, it's okay. You could just take a picture of the slide, or you could go watch the recording again, either way. Like, have we tested the audio equipment in the space? You can hear it from all sides of the room. Do we have somebody to hold open the doors? Has anybody like walked the space just to see if it's like accessible on a single level, like from where the parking or the entrances to the meeting room to the restroom, and like kind of that loop? Is there like areas where people who have a harder time hearing, where they could sit closer or have enlarged copies of materials, etc. So this is just to give you a broad overview and kind of a jumping off point. Next slide. Okay, this is a big one. Location. Is it centrally located? And I know this is such a struggle, especially like the Northwoods. I think you guys have 6 or 7 counties, right? But I guess if it's like a state assembly for a certain district, you would probably want to make sure it was located somewhat centrally within that district. Does the venue have accessible entrances, restrooms? This is also another big one. And I know it's not probable in certain areas, especially a lot of our rural areas, but is the venue accessible by public transportation? That's a really important consideration. Or is there a parking lot if it's in an urban area, like where it's not difficult to park? Again, contrasts, slides large enough. Have we added captioning? I also wanted to point out to you that Molly Carmichael, who is our comms and tech at state, she is more than happy to help you guys. If you don't know how to host a hybrid Zoom for these candidate forums, she will help you. Or the transcription, she will also help you. And I have her express permission to say that. And you can also just reach out to any of us, because we're very laid back and we will make sure you get to the right person. I I always also, if you've been to any of my presentations, I love quotes. So here we go. Here's a quote for the night from me. Democracy is based upon the conviction there are extraordinary possibilities in ordinary people. Harry Emerson Fosdick. And one more. The case for women is not that they are inherently better or more moral, is that they are half of humanity and should have the same opportunities and be judged by the same standards as the other half. And kind of think of that in light of not just women, but kind of like we did in the first video about like all the different people in your neighborhood, people that you meet every day, but maybe you don't interact with every day. And I just wanted to kind of end with that.
I think with that, we'll pass it on to Posy.
Okay, thank you, Maria. I learned a lot. I am realizing we really need to be more ADA compliant, and I just want to give a shout out and thank you for that. Just a little bit about this bit of presentation. If you're looking for the answer of how to do a perfect form or what works, it's just not going to happen. I want to thank people from leagues who responded to the survey, because I'm just going to be sharing some of the results with that. As I'm going through these slides, just hitting on some of the different elements and challenges, please feel free to put in like, hey, we do this, or a question in the chat, and we will try to get to them. I think that is really the best use of our time together, is to be discussing and talking about those things. Okay, next slide. I keep wanting to change the slide myself. Hard to be dependent. In going through the surveys that people sent in, I was really amazed at how different we all, the different environments and the different things that we have to work with when we're doing a forum. We have people who can go to a television studio and have a professionally recorded, beautiful forum done. We have people who are holding a camera in their hand. Geography is certainly a challenge. So there's no one right way to do it, but we have different resources in terms of volunteers available to help, technology and space. But interestingly, many of our problems are the same. Next slide. Okay, so briefly, we're going to talk about some challenges, opportunities, share some best practices that came in through the survey, look at some alternatives to forums, and then hopefully have plenty of time for questions and comments. Next slide. So our biggest challenge, of course, this was pretty much universal, and that was getting candidates to respond to the invitation and to get them to participate. This may be less so this go round in our spring elections here, where we are dealing with nonpartisan races, but it's still an issue, and in partisan races, it's a big one. Next slide. Okay, what do candidates say? Some will cite a scheduling conflict. And so it behooves us always to make as Eileen said, a good faith effort to work around candidates' schedules. We usually look at, like, oh, it's school board. Oh, well, they have standing meetings on Thursday night and Tuesday nights. So we have to look at Wednesday. We try to work around that. I think the big problem is the perception that we are a liberal organization, that we are partisan, and candidates don't want to be associated with us. And then sometimes we just don't know because we never hear from them. We never know. And you may have some other reasons that you've heard from candidates, and feel free to pop those in the chat. The next slide. So some things that have worked. Asking constituents and supporters of that candidate to reach out to the candidate and encourage them to participate. This might not work with people who think we're witches, but it could. You never know, okay? If you can be flexible in your scheduling of the forum, by all means do so. Because remember, why are we doing this? We want to provide a service to voters. We want to make sure voters have the information they need. The more candidates they see side by side, the better they're going to be able to make a choice. So it's worth our effort to try to be flexible in our scheduling. When we were doing our forums over Zoom, we would occasionally have a candidate who was very uncomfortable with technology. And in our case, someone who knew the candidate was asked to go help that person just navigate the technology, and it made it possible for that candidate to be present. I'm just wondering if any of you have really ever tried shaming candidates in either a nice way or a more direct way. Anybody? Well, pop it in the chat, and we'll definitely hit on that. Let's see. I think one thing we did recently when we had candidates, I think it would have been in spring, fall of 2022, when we had candidates calling us out on Facebook saying, you know, they wouldn't participate, and, you know, the comments were really pretty horrible. We actually partnered with our neighbors at the Appleton Fox Cities League and had a very nice letter to the editor just explaining our nonpartisan stance. It didn't get anybody to change their mind on it. I'll be honest about that, but it made us feel good, and it was taking the high road, I think. Next slide. LWVUS actually has talking points for working with candidates who are not participating, and we'll put a link in the chat or in the follow-up email that you may get about this to that website. But some of the points they make is, and that we should be making to candidates and we should be making to the public, is that it's the voters who lose when candidates refuse to participate. We're not doing the forums to make us look good. We are doing the forums to present the information to the voter, and they're the ones who are denied that opportunity. A candidate forms a job interview. Would you hire someone who refused the job interview? I am a little nervous about really making a statement about why a candidate doesn't participate, just because I think it could appear to be partisan, but maybe there's a way that I could couch my language a little bit better. The other thing is that voters really have a negative view of candidates who don't participate. And so, you know, is that who they want to be? I don't think so. So this is a big challenge we have. We know this is a problem nationwide, that leagues all over the nation are having candidates refusing. So we're going to really need to come up with something in order to make that work. Next slide. Some other challenges. These all come from the survey that that was sent out. Some leagues are having a hard time finding a location, adequate size for the number of candidates in the audience. And I'd like to add in there that is ADA compliant and allows for things like a hearing loop and things like that. There are some leagues that are really struggling with what are some of the best ways to promote and publicize the forums. We usually put something on Facebook. We usually have a press release. Once we put something on Facebook, not on our page, but we post it on some of the community pages, the little towns in our county that have their own community, you know, buy and sell Facebook page. That usually generates quite a lot of interest, but I know you're not all on Facebook, and nor do all your communities have that. If you've got some great ideas for promotion, pop them in the chat. A challenge is choosing questions that really address the issues of the community. So really asking the questions that get at the meat of what's happening in a community. And of course, when the questions come from the audience, that's always a big plus. At least one league has reported that candidates, when answering a question, will tell an out and out lie. So where does that put us? Are we guilty of disseminating false and misleading information? How do we handle that? That's definitely a challenge. That's something that you have to problem solve very, very quickly. Other leagues reported problems with security during a forum and having to be sure there was a police presence there. There you go. Technology glitches with both Zoom and OWL, and we've even had issues, our league, when something was professionally recorded where there was some difficulty with the audio. And in one case, it may have been the videographer's issue, and in one case, we definitely know it was the candidate who was not at all speaking into the mic. So I guess a best practice is to make sure the mics are working and the candidates are really aware of how they need to speak into that. Next, please. Okay, so some nuts and bolts, and you know, Eileen went through this really in nice detail. So I don't think we really need to get into this one. I would say Maria did have some good ideas for promoting the forums. And I think if we have friendly organizations in our community that will help promote, that's always a big plus. Choosing questions, recording and posting. We put things on our website, on our YouTube, and we actually usually send the candidates a copy of the recording with the requirement that it is not edited if they share it. And then some leagues do a really good job of following up with the candidates, seeing what worked for them, what could we do better, and of course always a thank you. Okay, the next slide. Some best practices, there we go. Okay, go ahead, next slide. Okay, most leagues have a really detailed checklist for everything, a process that they follow to the letter, and that is critical to do that. Some of the leagues that do recordings of individual candidates and then post them felt that having a short focus time with one candidate really works well for the candidate and for the viewer. They're not spending forever watching all of this. I think this was our neighbors in the Appleton Fox City, and I don't know, did they have 9 or 11 school board candidates in one election, maybe last spring, and they really could not, if they did a live forum, they probably would have had time for 2 questions. And so they came up with this idea and they're sticking with it. Most of us have a good script for the moderator to follow, so there's no ad-libbing. In a Zoom forum, have a practice session a few days before the actual forum. You want to be sure that the technology works, that the lighting is good, you can hear them. The more comfortable You know, some people just aren't on Zoom all the time like we are, and it's very uncomfortable for them. We also had a situation, I will just say, in a practice session where the candidate had a painting behind him that was a nude, and it just wasn't a good look, you know, for the in a candidate forum. And so that was, they just said, could you just be in another room or take that painting down? And it was a good thing that that kind of happened. You'll be timing your candidates. What's your method? What are you going to do if a candidate goes over that's both respectful but firm? Okay, next. We have a lot of things we learned the hard way. When you're reaching out to candidates, when you are announcing, giving the information at the start, in everything you do to promote the forum, make sure you mention that we are nonpartisan. It can explain what that means. In a live forum, or you could have this available on a Zoom, a handout with the candidate contact information. When we do a live forum and we get questions from the audience, sometimes the people say, well, you didn't choose my question. And they're, you know, the audience members come up to us and they're a little honked that we didn't choose their question. And sometimes there's a good reason. Maybe it wasn't, you know, for all the candidates, or maybe, you know, it sort of went in a not very good direction. If the voter has that contact information, just say, hey, call this person, email this person, or, you know, they're hanging around afterwards, go ask them that question. We still want that voter to get their questions answered, so they're going to be able to make a great choice. Okay. I think I covered the recording, partnering, that was covered in Eileen's part as well. And then finally, sending a thank you note to everyone who's involved in the forum, the volunteers, the candidates, the site. If you're having it at your public library, send a thank you note to the library. Anyone who helped with that. It's just good PR. It's just being a good neighbor and a good community member. Next. Okay, some forum alternatives that have come through here. I mentioned the taped interviews with Appleton Fox Cities. These were done so well, and I'm sure I'll leave some of it out, but they were very careful to make sure every candidate got the same questions in the same order, the same amount of time. And the recordings themselves were not that long, so they were very consumable by the audience. They also did not post any of the recordings of these one-on-one interviews until they were all complete. Genius, and they looked fabulous. Dane County partners with some other organization, maybe it changes, and they actually provide the moderator and just assist in the planning, and that is the extent of their involvement. So they have, you know, they make sure the questions are unbiased. They provide the moderator. The other organization does the dirty work, does the hard work of contacting the candidate and doing all of those things. If anyone is here from Dane County, I'd love to know what organizations you partner with. Ashland Bayfield County has done meet and greets with candidates, live meet and greets. And while they said the attendance wasn't that great, that the candidates felt it was really valuable. And so maybe that's something that people will get used to doing, to coming to a live event where you go from table to table, talking with a candidate, maybe like speed dating or something. Appleton Fox Cities also does legislative town halls during off years for election. Those are over Zoom. You can actually see one on their website, their one from last year, and they're really great. And if you've got anything where you're kind of outside the box, please put it in